All right, we were talking about the demise of Germany, the division of Germany in the Cold War. So let's continue on with that today, shall we? Remember, next week we only meet once on Wednesday, or Wodenstag. Actually, they call it Mittwoch, middle week, middle of the week. But it's named for Woden, for Odin, Woden. That's where we get Wednesday. Yeah, it's named. It's just they're all of our, most of our names of our days of the week come from Germanic gods.
Really?
Yeah. Like Tuesday is from Tui, Wednesday for Woden, Thursday for Thor, Friday for Free or Freeze.
So our calendar,
And then Saturday and Monday are actually Roman gods, Saturn and Mars.
so our calendar and our days are a mix of
We got one day of the week.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of interesting how it is. The days of the week are a mix of Roman and German or Germanic deities.
Was it originally before the Roman and the German calendar, whatever? Was it like Jewish or something?
No, I mean it's the Romans came up with the days of the week named after their gods, and then when it kind of in English it got blended in with the German.
And most of the generals and leaders of Rome are basically the months. There's Augustus, August, or the Octavian, October, before he changed his name. There's
Yeah, the
July,
months.
Julius.
Yeah, you're talking about the months, sure. The months. See, now we're on the Roman history, but the months are, actually they had 10 months to start off with.
Yeah, I like it. That's
And so they were numbered, so December means 10, November comes from the word for 9, October comes from the word for 8, September for the word for 7. Yeah. August is named after Augustus Caesar, July is named after Julius Caesar.
Octavian and
Sunday's
October.
What about June, May?
June is named after Juno. Juno was the goddess of love, the goddess of marriage. That's why the best time to get married is June.
Octavian.
Because the Romans got married in June because she
That's time to get married.
was the patroness goddess of the family and of women. So mid-June was actually the best time to get married.
So October and August, basically the same person. He just changed his name.
Yes,
October, Octavian, and Augustus.
yes. January's for Janus, the two-faced god. April is coming up. April is from the Latin word apere, which means to open, like the flowers open in April. Mars is Mars for the month of March, the god of war.
What February?
Ooh, you'll have to look that one up.
Wait, do you really know?
Aries.
February.
The months are Roman, but the days are German.
All right, let's go on.
Cupid.
So
You guys have sidelined me long enough. I like to leave a little mystery.
Your Roman course was last semester.
The Roman coast was so last semester.
I know. Time to get on with
Basically,
our
most of
lives.
the months are basically Roman, but the days are Germanic.
Yes, that is correct.
Except
That's because Julius Caesar redid the whole calendar. We call it the Julian calendar. But that's a whole nother discussion.
Roman Festival of Purification.
Sunday's,
What's that? What's the name of it?
Sunday's
It's
Christian.
named after Februara,
February.
Roman's Festival of Purification, which is held in February.
There you go. January for Janus. Well, let's talk about not the Romans. It's interesting because when I talked about the Romans last semester, people wanted to talk about other things. But when I talk about the Germans this semester, we want to talk about the Romans.
So basically, don't ever name your class what you actually want.
Yeah, I could just say class, and then I can just talk about whatever. And then when you guys decide that that's what you want to talk about, we'll just, it'll be a stream of consciousness history course.
I like it.
What do you think?
Not for next
That's
semester.
pretty much what it is next fall when we have history through popular culture. It's a stream of consciousness. So remember, my courses should be listed now. I hope. They should be listed. Yeah, you don't care, but yeah. But I have three upper level courses. One is 1 hour. It's applied history. One is history through popular culture, where we look at film and literature. We even look at, one week, at songs. Anyway, songs can be used in that course. And then I have a course called History and Archaeology of the Ancient Near East, where we look at history and archaeology of the ancient Near East. It's a very descriptive title. But it's a lot like Old Testament archaeology. Yes?
Will the history through pop culture be a hybrid class, or will it be a
Oh, it will.
Be a lot of video
class
science.
Well, there will actually be in that class will be a kind of a, it'll be a little different because when we have class, there will be no lecturing. We will only have discussion. And so you will watch a sort of lecture online, but then you'll have to watch independently a film or read a novel, and then when you come to class, we will discuss those films and novels. That'll be the whole class. Yes?
Can you give us an example of what kind of novel, like just any example you might pick?
Well, there'll be a list. I don't have the list completely compiled, but it'll be historical. You know, sometimes I could take suggestions, but we have genres of what each week is, and you have to make it fit that.
Right. Wait, we don't have to read a novel a week, do we?
No, you have to read 2 novels during the semester, and you get to pick which week it is. You get to pick which week it is. Yeah, well, you'll just have to sign up. It's hard to explain. But basically, each week there will be a list of things that you can choose. One of your choices will be a novel. Other choices will be films. But you will have to do 2 novels throughout the semester. So if you want to wait and do those both at the end, more power to you. Or if you want to do them at the beginning, or so forth. I mean, but so mixed throughout the semester, you'll be reading a novel, or you actually be reading 2, I believe, and then you'll be watching films, about 10 films. Now you could read more novels if you want to read all novels. That would be fine. You have to read at least 2 novels. But I assume people want to avoid that because that takes time. Okay.
Wait, really quick. What's the applied history class? I was gonna ask you anyway, but now we're asking about your classes, so I thought I'd ask so we can talk later.
We're just pretending Jabez is presenting and,
Yeah, Jabez is presenting about my classes.
He is Jay.
Hey, man! I'm Jabez.
You can't be Jabez, you're actually here.
Yeah, that's true.
Just keep doing
Well, I could do it like this. I'm doing it remotely. Okay. Applied history is a course that's upper level. It's 1 hour. You can take it multiple times, actually as many times as you like. And incoming people next fall will actually have to take it 3 times. But right now, it's your choice. But it will become a thing that's in the catalog, okay, as a requirement. But it could, it fulfills upper level history hours. What is it? It's different every time, so it's hard to say what it is. The framework of it is we meet once a week. It's a 1 hour class. We'll meet on Fridays. And at the heart of it will be experiences different than classroom, at least that's the hope. Okay, so we will have what I attempt to do every semester, we'll see how it works here, is we'll have 3 on-campus presentations that you will go to and kind of analyze and we'll talk about, and there will be 3 off-campus events. And then the other weeks, that's 6 weeks out of the 15, and the other weeks we will find some other things to do and discuss. So my rough outline for next fall is we do have the Constitution Day speaker coming, so that will be one of our on-campus events. I'm going to have an alumnus come and speak, and I don't have that lined up yet, but that'll be the second of our speakers. The third speaker I don't have lined up yet. The off-campus events, again, just tentatively, will probably be going to a museum in Tampa, because I met the director of a museum over there, and going to persuade, I think students could get in for free, because in the fall, I'm not going to have any budget, because it all got approved too late to put a fee. Normally, I put a small fee in your registration, and then that I can access that fee to help do things. So, another event would probably be a local history place, nearby. Maybe the Flight Place, although that's $12, but we'd have to come up with the $12 ourselves, since I don't have it attached to a fee. Or some other local history place that's not too far away for right now. It's possible, it's possible that we could do something further away, like go to St. Augustine and go to the Spanish fort there. But I figure maybe a lot of people have already done that. I don't know how many people have done that. You've never done that? And I'm not really sure how long it would take us to get there. 2.5 hours. So that's possible, and what we would try to do is do those events on Fridays. And since it's a school, a class required thing, just like people go and play basketball, we will have an excuse.
There's a basketball club?
No, totally missed that.
I'm saying it's a school-sponsored event, so you should be released from your other classes.
Oh, so we'll miss school, but we'll have excused absence.
Yes. Yeah, probably 1 or 2 times in the semester. Okay. Depending on how far away it is. So, perhaps go to St. Augustine would be one of them. It'd be something that, if a lot of people haven't done that, we could go to the fort, we could look around, I could check out what the admission is for the fort. I can drive, I can take about, my vehicle, I could kind of squeeze in 8 people into my vehicle, certainly 7, and then we'll see how many people are in the class.
Then there's the roof rack too.
I could tie people on the roof rack, put a chair up there like a rocking chair,
Duct tape.
duct tape
There
them.
might even be other faculty that might want to even go on that trip, that would be willing.
There might be. Perhaps Professor Lloyd might want to go. He could drive, or whatever. Anyway, we'd have to carpool to get there. And then we would go around and see the fort. And then I would probably try to find some other things for us to see. And then usually we eat lunch, somewhere up there. Yes?
Since it would be a school-sponsored event, couldn't you get a bus?
Well, that's what I have to explore. I don't know how they do it here. It is a school-sponsored thing, but I don't know if I have to pay for it.
Yeah, do we need a budget for a bus?
Yes, I wouldn't want to take a bus. It would be too big, but a
Talking
van.
about the southeastern, the ones that the school owns.
Yeah,
Adriana's my name.
it's possible, but I think the last place I was at, you had to have a budget line for transportation to access the motor pool. They didn't just let you check it out because it was a school thing. It had to be paid for by the mile.
Right.
Not if we just get the keys.
Yeah, I mean, grand theft auto is always a possibility. It is a felony, but,
Not a big deal.
you guys don't have a record, so I'll let you do it.
Exactly. Do you have a record, Dr. White?
I didn't say I had a record.
You said that we don't have a record.
I said, you guys don't have a record.
That you have a
How do
record.
you know?
Take it whatever way you want.
Well, when I applied for the job here, one of the questions was, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
And you weren't convicted.
And so I answered, no, I was not. I was never convicted. And that was my answer. And that's what I'm sticking to.
That's good, though.
I was never convicted. I didn't.
At least you did.
There's a lot of things left out by the word. They've precisely worded that question. I precisely worded my answer. No, never convicted. That's what I said. And they let it go.
Yeah, they didn't ask if you were tried for
It's
anything.
good lawyer stuff right there.
Yeah, finding that loophole.
Now, they did do a background check on me, and evidently that came back okay. I don't know how that happened, but it did. I don't know how that happened. I guess that witness protection thing really works.
Words, yeah, you never know what's going on.
Anyway, we have to move on.
We're talking about Yalta.
We're talking about Yalta, supposedly, and all this is being recorded.
Yes, I love when it gets recorded.
Yeah, you love when this stuff gets recorded, right? Then it's admissible in court.
Never convicted.
What?
It's not gonna rain anymore. It was supposed to rain, and now
She wore her cute
my
rain boots.
humongous rain boots and don't fit me.
There's only so many days a year you can wear rain boots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like every day in the summer you can wear rain boots.
Yeah, it rains every day, starting what, in like June or July?
The end of April. it'll-
End of April, yeah, it'll rain every day. All right, so those are the courses. Applied history is going to be a different thing, but the intention is to try to expose you to different aspects of history, history outside the classroom, lectures, things off campus, and then what you'll do is you will write some things about what we experience. I'll try to ask you some questions. That'll be your main
Will there
assignments.
be video assignments?
There might be.
I like video assignments.
He likes them. You don't like them. She doesn't like what?
It really depends.
This is my last semester.
So we'll see. Yeah, he's just going to say he likes it because he's leaving. I don't anticipate any video
I can
assignments.
tell you I enjoy 20-page papers, and you could do that for your next couple classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's try to get back to the topic at hand.
Yalta.
Yalta, we were talking before we were so rudely interrupted about.
Interrupted. That's not very nice.
Well, I didn't say who interrupted me.
Thanks, Mark.
Interrupted yourself, sir. So you're rude to
Anyway,
yourself.
I'll joke on that.
I never mentioned who interrupted the conversation that we were having.
You implied it. There was a
Yalta.
propensity to the statement.
We got this.
Back to Yalta. Woo! Yeah, nobody knows what's going on. Let's go back one. So remember, Roosevelt is meeting at Yalta. He's worried about Japan. He's worried about how that's going to be handled. They're pretty confident that the European conflict's going to be over, and so he makes concessions to the Russians, to the Soviets, if the Soviets would make some concessions to him. But the main thing that he wanted is he wanted the Soviets to agree to the United Nations. He wanted the Soviets to agree that they would help in the Asian front with Japan. The Soviets said, well, we want these islands back from Japan, and we want Manchuria, which the Japanese had occupied in China, or what had been Chinese territory. So that's what they wanted. What Roosevelt wanted, not only help with Japan, but he wanted help pushing through his idea of a United Nations. And the United Nations did begin then in April after the end of the European conflict. Yes?
Was it the Russians who took Berlin mostly?
Well, the Russians moved in from the east. In fact, we slowed down.
Right, because I remember it was going to be a huge loss of life when you took that one, and I didn't know if that was something that was discussed at the conference as well.
I think you want to say something. So go ahead.
What happened was the Red Army took Berlin, and then they met up with the Allied forces at the Elbe River, which is like further away from Berlin.
Right, but was that something that was like the U.S. told Russia, hey, you take Berlin and we'll meet you over here? Was that something that was discussed?
I don't think that detail was discussed. The idea is that the Russians would move from the east and the other Allied forces from the west. And in fact, I do know that the other Allied forces slowed down their progress
Right,
to make sure the Russians actually got into Germany
before they did.
because certain U.S. generals wanted to move all the way through. And so basically this does set up the idea, and of course the Soviet forces do move up to what would become the border of East and West Germany. All right, the third conference then is a conference talking about, I'm going to see if I can.
Looks healthy in that picture.
Yeah, he looks healthier because he's dead and he's not there.
Oh, it's not. That's true.
That was tough.
That's Harry S. Truman.
They look kind of similar though.
She does look I see what you,
Yeah, Well,
Churchill
out of the three people who have been in the previous pictures, only one of them is the same, and that's Stalin. Yes. Churchill is not dead, but he was voted out right after the war because a lot of people didn't like his policies. He was quite conservative politically. And so, surprisingly to many Americans, he was voted out almost immediately after the end of the war. And they put in Attlee, who is a more liberal politician. And of course, Roosevelt dies and his vice president becomes president, and that is Harry S. Truman. So in July of 1945 then, this meeting at Potsdam is right outside of Berlin. So this is now in the newly liberated, conquered territory of Germany. They have a meeting about how to handle the rest of the war, how to handle Germany now that Germany has surrendered. What are we going to do now? Because Germany had taken a lot of territory. What are we going to do with that territory? Germany itself has lots of Nazis in lots of political places. Truman is not as agreeable with Stalin as far as how things are going to work, because most people believe this is when Truman found out at this meeting that the atomic bomb was ready and that the atomic bomb could be used to leverage the Japanese to surrender. So a massive amphibious assault on Japan was not going to be necessary, most people believed at this point. So since he found that out, and since it was clear now that the Soviets had moved all the way in, and all the players had changed but Stalin, Truman was much less, I think he looks a lot less friendly here, and he's a lot less agreeable to make concessions to the Soviets, because they didn't trust each other. So most people believe that altered his views. In fact, of course, when you're vice president, you don't know a lot of what's going on. You become president, then he had to learn all about all the war things, plus he had to work. We've been working on this atomic bomb for many years, and then he finds out while he's here that this has actually been tested and it's actually ready to go. Okay, so this certainly, most people believe, affected the Potsdam Conference in his views. So Truman's much more forceful than demanding that there be free elections in all this territory that had been Germans. In other words, we liberate this territory from German control, Eastern Europe, and that Eastern Europeans, Poland and Czechoslovakia, so they would have their own elections and they would freely elect, in a more democratic election, their leaders and set up their government. And that basically they should not be dominated by the West or the East. Of course, at this time, they didn't call it the West or the East. It was called it the Allies. Stalin, again, was not agreeable to this because he wanted, as you remember, a buffer. Stalin refuses this.
Is that supposed to be Stalin?
It's supposed to be.
This,
Why doesn't he have a neck?
that is not Stalin. That is supposed to be a Soviet soldier who is guarding the border. It's a propaganda cartoon, I guess, or illustration. And, if you don't like it, we'll send you to Siberia.
Yeah, I
So-
saw that one.
So just keep that in mind. Like it, so it's like Soviet Union, like it, or go to Siberia. So basically, once Stalin says, look, I'm not going for this sort of democracy thing you're talking about. I'm not going to do that. Then we'll see the only real alternatives is an invasion. And some people wanted to do that. Some of the generals wanted to do that from the beginning. They had the army there. They had it mobilized. They wanted to just push, even wait, don't let the Soviets even get into Germany. Push through Germany and just push through Eastern Europe and push the Soviets right on back into Soviet territory and then set the boundary up there. That did not go over because obviously that would have led to undoubtedly another war or a different kind of war. Yes?
I know the Cold War lasted for a really long time, but was it one of those things that it was like, the further away we got from this time in history, the less likely it was that there was actually going to be that all-out war?
No, I don't think so. No. Well, the shift changes. This kind of conventional war, I think, got further away because once we had pulled all our troops back and all that kind of thing, but then the threat becomes nuclear war and missiles, short range first, and then ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles, could be actually sent. Eventually, both the Soviets and the United States had them. So I don't think the threat was gone. I think the threat was real. A lot of people were very afraid of it. And then, of course, we had things like the Cuban Missile Crisis and so forth. So anyway, no, I think the threat was very real. The Cold War could have turned hot. And of course, then what happens is we get involved in this sort of third party, it's like we're not going to fight Soviets directly, we fight them indirectly in Korea, them and the Chinese, indirectly in Vietnam, and so forth. And then the Soviets move into Afghanistan, and then we sort of fight them indirectly there by helping rebels there. Well, the Soviets view the West as imperialists. The West viewed communism as a conspiracy to dominate the world. Now think about this. Let's say in 1914, 1915, there were no communist countries in the world. By 1945, certainly by 1949, about 35 years later, we have a big chunk of the world is under communist control. You have the Soviet Union, you have China, you have Eastern Europe, and then we have places in both Central and South America as well as Africa that are being highly influenced this way and will eventually become Marxist state as well. So, the idea that will develop in the West is that communism, the Soviet Union, is not content just to be a communist country on their own. That they are actively recruiting, influencing other states, other countries, inciting revolution and so forth at different places of the world. That's what the Cold War is really about. The idea to try to block or check the communist advance in different parts of the world. So this is at the heart of the Cold War. So here is a map then that we could leave up here for a few minutes just to talk about this advance that the Soviets had made and how this ends up dividing Germany and leads into the Cold War. The Soviets have advanced across Eastern Europe. Pretty much all this territory that you see highlighted here.
What's going on with Albania down there? Are they the
Albania is a communist country,
okay?
but they defy the Soviets to some extent. So that's why
Not under
the lines are drawn there.
they have a small curtain instead of a big curtain.
Yes, Albania is sort of a little different. Yugoslavia as well is communist. So Albania and Yugoslavia are both communist states, but they both defy the Soviets to some extent. So they remain somewhat independent, but still communist. So they draw the Iron Curtain line here to be on the outside of Yugoslavia. but they still draw a little iron curtain around Albania. Yeah. So those are the areas that are they're both communist and both have very powerful dictators, communist dictators. Tito is the guy in Yugoslavia. Anyway, so yeah, that's one of the Jackson Five. Tito. It's one of Michael's brothers. Look it up.
Anachronism.
Okay. So you see Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and so forth. All of this territory, remember, how did the Germans end up with this territory?
Wasn't it conceded to them by Soviets?
Yeah, it was. I mean, at the beginning of the war, remember in World War I, the newly formed Soviet Union gave up all of this land to Germany. Then at the end of World War I, the Allies did not want to give it back to the Soviet Union because they were communist, and they certainly didn't want the Germans to have it. So what we had were fledgling countries all across Eastern Europe. Then during World War II, the Germans were able to invade much of this territory. And the Soviets also took some of it back. And so what we see is by the end of World War II, the Soviets had pushed back through all this territory they had once conceded and controlled, and even then some more land. So basically you see this red line which starts up here at the Baltic and goes all the way to the Black Sea, all the way down to the Adriatic. This is called by Winston Churchill the Iron Curtain. Notice that included in it, the only country that is actually divided by the Iron Curtain is Germany. So we see this line starting here at this area of Czechoslovakia, going up through Germany, up to the Baltic. That divides East Germany, eastern part of Germany, from the western part of Germany. The Western Allies had pushed this far into Germany, and then they did slow down to allow the Soviets to move into East Germany. Because the idea was the Allies, the four Allies, although France was a part of it, they had been not as active militarily because they'd been occupied, but France, United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union were then going to divide up. They do divide up Germany, and they divide up Berlin into different regions, sectors. Okay? That's what you see up here. In Berlin, you've got the Soviet sector, the French sector, the British sector, the U.S. sector, and that inset up here. And so Berlin, even though it's inside of East Germany, since it's the capital, it's divided up between those four allies as well. This is what sets up a lot of the tension. You end up then, since they can't come to a resolution to unify Germany with free elections, basically the Soviets dominate East Germany and they dominate Berlin, and that's what sets up the division. We have West Berlin as an island of, I guess, democracy in a sea of East German totalitarian state. And so then this becomes a flashpoint where people from East Germany, if they can get to Berlin, they could cross to West Berlin, then they could get out. Yes?
Is that the Berlin Wall that you're talking about?
I'm talking about, yes, the Berlin Wall is not built yet.
Okay.
The Berlin Wall will be built along this line for that very reason, to stop the flow of people leaving. Okay? You build a wall for one of two reasons, either keep people in or keep people out. Yes?
Why did you say it was keeping like the rest of Germany like not in Berlin? What was keeping people from crossing in those places?
Well, they end up setting up checkpoints all across here. They set up eventually a wall or a fence, a border, and they control all the roads, all the trains, anything that's crossing on land. They have checkpoints where you have to go through. They check your identity papers and your residency and so forth. And typically, unless you have very special permission, you're not going back and forth here. Now, at first, it's more open, but this is what eventually
Right, 'cause
will happen.
after everybody starts flying, they're like, okay, we gotta stop this.
Yes. Once everybody's fleeing out, then that's when they put up the border. So they're putting up the walls, the barriers to keep people in. And by the way, all along this Iron Curtain are checkpoints, controlled borders. There's not free borders. So if you wanted to go, say, from Austria to Czechoslovakia, you had to go through a heavily guarded
So it wasn't
border.
just people fleeing out of Germany over, it was people maybe on all sides of the Iron Curtain?
Yeah, other people too, but mostly focused in Germany. But yes, and that gets most intense in Germany because, nowhere else do you have this little island in the midst of the whole country that you can turn to. A long time ago, I actually crossed the Iron Curtain before the Iron Curtain fell. I crossed it in two places. I crossed it into Czechoslovakia at a place called Bratislava. Then I crossed it into Hungary here, and I went to Budapest. So those were the countries I went, and you can see the walls were there, the guard towers, high-powered binoculars on tripods, rifles with scopes, mirrors. As you went across the border, they were checking mirrors, looking underneath your vehicle. They would open up your vehicle and search through it, and so forth. But that was a long time ago. The Iron Curtain. Now, the Iron Curtain is not a curtain, nor is it made out of iron. I've had people on tests write how the Iron Curtain was constructed of steel and it divided things. I've had people write that. It is not a curtain made out of iron. That is a euphemism. That is an analogy. But it is a real border. It is a real protected border that stretches from the north all the way to the south. The phrase Iron Curtain is actually Winston Churchill speaking in Missouri at a university, a college there. He spoke at an address there, and he said, "An iron curtain has descended across the continent." He's saying it's not only dividing Germany, but it's dividing Europe. So that was his imagery. Everybody started using it. We still use it today, right? So basically you have two hostile camps. What forms then at the end of World War II, sometimes I've even asked the question, who fought whom in World War II? And I get some interesting answers. Like I said, the United States fought Russia, for example. I can even put a multiple choice. Which of the following, were in conflict in World War II? They'll choose USSR and USA. Anyway, so there's two hostile camps. One of them communist, one of them behind the Iron Curtain, as it comes to be known, behind in those countries I just showed you on the map. The idea here is that technically there were supposed to be free elections at the end of the war. However, the Soviets' definition of a free election and probably your definition of a free election they are the same? Oh. Are probably not the same. For example, they would have elections, but most of the time there was only one candidate. So you could freely vote for the candidate of your choice,
Who is this guy? And
but there's only one candidate. So that person was elected in free elections to serve. So there you go. So keep that in mind. That was often the case. Now that wasn't what the West had in mind, right? They wanted actual debate or choice to vote for at least 2 or more people for the office. Okay? Now, what you see pictured here, of course, is the Berlin Wall before it's taken down in front of the Brandenburg Gate. So this is sort of in the heart of Berlin. If you go there today, of course, most of the wall is gone. And what you see now in a lot of the places, they paint a line or they have some indication this is where the wall was. There are sections, small sections of the wall you can see. They have them on sort of an outdoor museum-like thing.
It's not even 10:50.
Every time. Well, let's do one more and then we'll have to go. So Eastern Europe then is occupied by the Soviet troops. The Soviets don't want to leave. Stalin wants this buffer. And he sets up what many people might call puppet governments, much like in The Godfather. Puppet governments where the Soviets are basically getting their candidates in, and those candidates, those people who are now elected freely, in quotes, will now be under the influence, under the thumb of the Soviets. And all their supplies, all their military, everything would come from them. So all of Eastern Europe, as we've already noted, except Yugoslavia and Albania, they will defy the Soviets to some extent because they have very powerful dictators there, but they are communists nonetheless. And so the Soviets do not bother to invade them and take that over since they're communist. They sort of view them as a part of the buffer anyway. But the communist parties kind of took over themselves in Eastern Europe, in Yugoslavia and Albania. So we have communist countries then all along that line. So I think the next thing I have here, and this will probably be the last screen for today, is a map showing you the rendering of the Iron Curtain, starting up here in the Baltic, cutting down through, these are all checkpoints or crossing points, coming down through by Czech, now it's called the Czech Republic, was called Czechoslovakia, with the border with Austria, and then all the way down here. So the Soviet Union has great influence here in Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, as it was called then, and of course Poland and everything else behind this. But the real flashpoint becomes along here, and especially in Germany, because you're actually dividing what had been a single country into 2. And the idea was we would unite these 2. I mean, that they wouldn't be divided, that they would come back and have free elections. When it becomes clear that can't happen, then eventually we'll see a division east and west. Well, it's now 10:50, so I guess that means we must bid adieu.